I found peace, loving on those who hate me. I found joy, raising babies with an angel on earth. I found worthless, saving dollars on a
And a 1 and a 2 and a 3. Ladies and gentlemen, played on the fabulous mid-50s Fender Stringmaster, an old Bob Wills theme song.
So welcome everybody to the Q Show. This today with the actual Q and the Q Show, I guess. Pat Quilter himself. So I think we've been on a journey exploring the Elevate lately, but today we're going to dig in a little bit with the DirectAmp, but we're going to dig in with a few other things. So, you know, it seems like, I don't know, people know a lot about you because a lot has been written about you. You know, they know the whole story of QSC at this point, or maybe they don't, who knows? But, you know, I guess recent news is, you know, that QSC was sold in a big transaction and all that. And I suppose the world's kind of wondering, what have you been up to, man? I kind of know a little bit, but...
Well, of course, you know, we've been working on Quilter Labs now since 2011, which has pretty much been taking up my energy. It's good for the world to know that since the transaction with QSC has added another 0 to my already ample nest egg. I guess we know that Quilter Labs will carry on.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's we stand on the shoulders of giants, both in terms of the technology I've learned designing power amps at Quilter Labs and of course the technology behind, you know, practically a century's worth of electric guitar amps.
Yeah, no kidding. That's quite the... In fact, we got to dig into that a little bit today. So, you know, the world wonders, what have you been up to? But interestingly, and I just actually, you know, you have this interest in the Edgar Rice Burroughs kind of via the Tarzan route. So for those who aren't already friends with Pat on Facebook and have seen his epic Tarzan video, profile picture, you got to check it out. Pat has gone through one of the most amazing transformations I've seen almost anybody go through, physically speaking. I think it was pre-COVID, you went through kind of an enormous...
Well, actually, during the COVID lockdown, you know, everyone was stuck at home for a couple of months. We moved my work computer home. I was doing stuff there. But it finally occurred to me, you know, I had spare time on my hands, no daily commute, nobody looking over my shoulder. So I ended up rereading all the lurid Tarzan novels I'd collected in high school, those wonderful old Ace paperbacks with their lurid Frank Frazetta covers. And then I had to stream all the movies. Then I discovered the fan pages on the internet, yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, I kind of reawakened a early 60s fascination with the writings of Edgar Rice Burroughs, who, of course, in 1912 kind of invented what you would call the modern superhero. Tarzan doesn't have superhuman powers like Superman, but he has the most possibly highly developed powers that a human being can have, maybe comparable to somebody like Batman or whatever, who can do the most amazing things that are just within the realm of possibility if you were actually raised in a jungle by apes and learned how to stay alive, use all your senses, and leap from tree to tree like a squirrel.
I mean, it's kind of amazing, and actually, it's funny you turned me on to, speaking of which, to Matthew Jang on YouTube, which is just if you haven't seen that, you got to check that out.
Yeah, here's a guy who can jump from one thing to another like a monkey. Just in case we were wondering if human beings could ever actually do anything like the Lord of the Jungle is supposed to have been able to do.
And he walks up to buildings and scales them to the third floor in 20 seconds. It's insane, yeah. But yeah, apparently you've been on kind of a writing spree. So that's the interesting one, I think, for the folks out there who may or may not be interested in such things. But you recently wrote what's it called, a fan?
Well, one of the things that let's face it, Tarzan's great period of popularity was in the 1930s.
Right.
There were fan clubs. Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated ran out of cards to send out to all the kids who were signing up in droves, and they had product placements and Tarzan ice cream.
Holy cow!
They kind of invented the modern merchandising, tie-in, multimedia licensing. There was a Tarzan radio show, of course, Tarzan movies, the original serialization of the stories in pulp fiction magazines, which in 1912, when it all started, were the popular, low-price entertainment of the day. This is before radio, before television. Movies were still crude flickers and, dark rooms in the back of somebody's store. But you could buy these 10-cent pulp magazines every week and have, a couple of fun stories to read, mostly in the form of, potboiler romances featuring, sailors and soldiers and knights in armor and aviators and people driving fast cars, all sorts of adventures. But when Edgar Rice Burroughs came out with his idea of a white man of British heritage raised in the jungle by a species of ape unknown to science, and on the cover was pretty much the first time that the pulp fiction magazines had ever featured a white guy with just a loincloth on.
Right.
The world went, was sensational.
The world went apes.
There you go. And so anyway, but even today, we still have fanzines. We still have, faithful few that are continuing to have little conventions. And of course, Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote other adventure series beyond that of Tarzan, which is my favorite. But, John Carter of Mars.
Which they made a movie of recently, didn't they?
A few years back, which, that's that's a side story. But it was notoriously badly handled by Disney and should have done better than it did, because it was a perfectly good movie, but kind of sank without a trace because they called it John Carter. Who wants to go see a movie about John Carter? If it had said John Carter of Mars, well, yeah, I might go see a space fantasy,
Hollywood missed a Hollywood, take notes. Yeah, they missed a opportunity on that one. So apart from that, musically, what have you been up to? Well,
continue to sit in with, there's a kind of a Leisure World string band I got roped into 15 plus years ago, and a bunch of very nice older folks that get together once a week. And we are privileged to have a emeritus professor from our local Saddleback College who comes in and kind of runs the class. So we spend a couple of hours, proposing and rehearsing songs. And by the end of the semester, we've got a list of 22 or so. We put on a dance show and in one of the senior Leisure World clubhouses, and It's kind of like a recital. And a good time is had. And then we got our periodic ukulele and guitar club or group that meets at the our old California classic beach at San Onofre.
Which is cool, by the way. It's one of the few beaches you can actually drive up onto the sand,
Yeah, kind of the last of the dirt parking lot, telephone pole, dividers, and right on there on the sand. Scenically overlooked by the San Onofre nuclear power plant, which has sadly been decommissioned owing to some mismanagement, but yet another side topic.
Side topic.
But anyway, we got that, and then there's ukulele clubs that get together at restaurants. So yeah, I get to play out a fair amount.
Yeah. It's I have to say San Onofre, because I go down there too. That's a good time, but they've been doing that since the 40s.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
And we used to get them. I was sorry to say they've largely aged out, but we would get these wonderful jazz guitar players who had all those great 50s standards under their belt, and then of course we get people that bring ukuleles and Hawaiian things. And
so imagine yourself sitting underneath all the bamboo fronds and looking out at the ocean, listening to that. Come down, actually, San Onofre Wednesday afternoons.
Well, not every Wednesday, or
Wednesday.
Well. Now that it's summer, probably somebody's there, but we actually have work to do here at the lab, we get down there every couple of weeks, maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty magic, I have to say. Okay, so. Development-wise, what have you been? What can you tell us?
Well, focus of the company lately has been on direct coupled products because let's face it, this is what most guitar players use these days.
Yeah.
In this world of silent stages and playing at home to the internet. So we have the DirectAmp, which we'll talk about some more later. We have the Elevate, which we've been talking about. I'm still kind of a actual combo amp kind of guy.
Yeah.
So behind me, of course, is sitting one of our Cubs that we've had for some years, which perfectly good 50-watt utility amp. Sounds great any place you want to go. Has good direct out capabilities and whatnot. But life moves on, so we've developed some new features. Like our Bluetooth input and additional voicing options and whatnot that we're incorporating into a successor to the Cub. And something closer to my heart, since we retired the Mach 2 in favor of Mach 3, we haven't had what you would call a singer-strummer amplifier.
Right.
That you can just walk up, plug a mic and a guitar into and put on a show. So that's also on the list of forthcoming products. And then we kind of go from there.
So we've shared pictures and stuff like that, but what is it actually like developing a product like that? That's something, the world kind of doesn't get to see all the hours on the bench and all that sort of stuff.
And, we are a small company, as so many are in this industry. So it's not like we can sit down with a building full of engineers and do something technically amazing like a modern cell phone or what have you. But I have a body of amplifier knowledge that I developed with my many, many years at QSC. And so we're able to bring Class D, high efficiency, lightweight, high power circuitry to the guitar amp world. And that's been kind of you might say, the underpinnings of our product line from the get-go. One thing I probably can claim somewhat unique knowledge in is that I know how to make a solid-state circuit sound warm. Tubes do have a wonderful natural sound characteristic. Not too surprising that, the electric guitar grew up with tube amps in the 30s and 40s, and so the two devices were just fiddled with and voiced until they played well together. But tubes aren't magic, they're science, and they have certain characteristics which I know how to incorporate into our products, so we can develop that nice warm sound without the weight and fragility and variability of modern tubes, which frankly aren't what they used to be back in the days when, our 23-tube RCA color TV would play faithfully for 10 years without any problems.
We forget so quickly how good products used to be.
But anyway, so anyway, I start with I've got basically three major power platforms, or four, I guess, if we count so we have the 800-watt bass block.
Right.
That's shares a lot of technology, surprise, surprise, with QSC-powered speakers because they have very high-power, compact power packs. Then we have our 200-watt platform that we use in the Mach 3 and our Tone Block 202 and Overdrive 202. Then we've got the 50-watt power plant that I use in the Aviator Cub and our 101 reverb amplifier head. And then I have a roughly 25-watt power platform based on a very tiny consumer IC. It's literally about a quarter-inch square.
Wow.
That's, part of a lot of modern little computer speakers and whatnot. So there's a technology that, they crank these things out by literally the millions and millions, and, the price comes down accordingly. So, one of the general tricks or goals, if you will, of working in the musical instrument field is we've got to learn how to piggyback on consumer technology because that's where all of the, product development, the enabling technology comes from. But, the consumer products aren't built to take a beating like guitar amps.
Yeah.
So part of the challenge is, either figuring out, our own versions based on the same general principles, but using, more rugged components.
Right.
Or figuring out how we can get good results with maybe, somewhat careful use of a more mass market device.
Right.
So the 24-watt or 25-watt power platform runs on 24 volts DC,
right?
Which makes it easier to qualify, and we provide a remarkably inexpensive 24-volt power pack with it. And so that enables us to have some more flexibility at the lower end of our line,
right?
And try to bring an honest 25 watts is actually pretty playable even
actually
on stage.
It as I tell people all the time, you kind of wouldn't believe what that thing will do. It's louder than you thought. I remember you were testing an amp one time in the old building, and I thought he was testing a Micro Pro. So a 200-watt amp. I thought he was testing that, and I walked in, and he was playing through this tiny, I think it was an inner block at the time, and I was stunned at how loud the thing was.
Well, and nowadays with, miking on stage and whatnot, anything ranging from a Princeton to deluxe, your 15 to 22 watt class of tube amps are deemed pretty much good enough for anything unless you need to put a show on of having a stack of, giant speakers behind you. So, but for everyday utility purposes, you don't really need enormous amounts of power unless you're trying to play very loud and clean, like a steel guitar player or even
jazz players.
Yeah, right. And sometimes even today, for one reason or another, it ends up being necessary to fill a room with an amplifier. So it's nice to have that headroom available to you.
Yep. And of course that also, it's good to balance it with the capability to go direct too. I can say that much, but really, I guess one thing I'm curious about, when you go to voice an amp, how do you approach that?
So I use, I think like most, amp designers, we all have a favorite instrument that we're used to playing, and for me, it's my faithful String Master. Which does have a nice middle-of-the-road tone. It's sort of between a humbucker guitar and a single coil.
Right.
It has these very nice twin pickups that are arranged in so that when they're both equally balanced with these little pots, they actually act as humbuckers. But because they're sort of separated a little, you kind of get this nice, clear, sweet tone.
Right.
And so, I mean, I can play clean. Or I can make it rock out. So I'm using, of course, our speaker volume control to regulate that volume so we don't blast the microphone out. So I'm going to put the gain back down. And then I've got the other 8-string neck tuned to a C6 chord.
Anybody else feeling like you want to take a vacation to Hawaii right now?
But anyway, so that's my tone source. And, I'm fortunate enough to be familiar with the long history of electric guitar amps, going back to the 1930s when Rickenbacker proudly announced they had a 10-watt amplifier that would make your guitar as loud as any piano. Which back in the day, of course, of acoustic big bands, a piano was one of the rhythm mainstays. It was there in the mix, and eventually the old, archtop guitar player who was, blanging away deep in the background was able to be heard finally. And then geniuses like Charlie Christian realized, this could be a solo instrument, and keep up with a, clarinet or a horn or whatever, and began to develop a style we would now call jazz guitar, but back in the day, it was just trying to get something out of it.
Right.
Anyway, early guitar amps were basically unequalized, but they had kind of a naturally open, warm sound just because of the way tubes naturally behave. So, hence what we now think of as the classic jazz tone is this kind of fat, bloopy sound that and then, but Leo Fender came up with the idea that if you kind of cut back on some of the mid-range, you get a brighter, chimier sound. That would cut through without distorting so much, because he didn't really like distortion. And then he ended up with a even silkier version. Which we now kind of call the blackface era.
Right.
So those, so I start with the more or less flat sound. And then I pretty much, but at this point in both the industry and my own experience, I have got pretty set frequency ranges and whatnot for the various EQ controls. And those three voices you just heard me go through with the three different inputs on our Cub were basically representational of the Tweed era, which was before they really came up with the mid-scoop.
Right.
And then the Blonde era, they still had the fat, wide treble control from the Tweed era, but they had come up with the idea of scooping out the mids to kind of take some clutter out of the middle of the chord.
Right.
And then went from there to try to clean it up some more and ended up with a thinner, brighter treble quality, which leaves even less in the mid-range. So those are kind of all the starting points, and kind of depends what speaker you're going to put in a combo, because that's a big part of the equation. So I ended up, we end up tweaking the tone values around the actual speaker that's going to be used. And And then I spend a lot of time trying to actually dial in the overdrive sound because that's really is the second half of, the electric guitar, certainly since the 60s.
It's what makes it a guitar and not a PA at that point. Yeah.
Well, in the 30s and 40s, we can suppose that guitar players just wanted to be louder. They didn't particularly want it to break up. But you can hear some of the early musicians, like in Bob Wills' Western Swing Band.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know if they were like exploiting the sound, but you can hear them pushing their amps and leaning into it.
Right.
So it was becoming part of the sound. And when the music revved up in the psychedelic era of the 60s, it suddenly became a new register for the guitar.
Right.
Because an unamplified guitar is actually a pretty tricky thing to record or represent because it starts out with this attack, which with an acoustic guitar is a very loud twang that quickly dies off to a much softer sound. And back in the days of very limited dynamic range recordings, that was tough. You either got breakup on the attack or you couldn't hear the rest of it. So the idea that you could take this decaying twang and kind of remap it into a overdrive sound that's sustained with a gradually decaying overtone. That became a signature sound that happened to fit more easily within the limited dynamic range of even vinyl records.
Right.
So anyway, trying to get a nice fluid sounding overdrive tone. Is one of the things I will spend a lot of time working on. And there's a bunch of little gotchas and tricks you have to attend to because you don't want it to be gagging or holding you back. Getting what I think of as kind of a certain quality of incisiveness while still being able to really kind of, as Nigel Tufnell said, push it over the cliff.
Does it go to 11?
And then, we've got some auxiliary features, like, for instance, the limiter. So you got this sound that's got sustain, but it also has breakup. And suppose you don't want the breakup. So we have a limiter knob that
Oh, wow.
what it does is, of course, intercept the volume just below breakup and then gradually release as the note dies away. And that can be dialed in to be sort of, partial limiting. Kind of get a little bit of what I think of as a rolling boil on your sound. Or you can take it all the way out.
He doesn't even have to pick it.
Yeah. So anyway, limiters are, they're a dynamic device that requires a lot of, there's time constants and some other tricks to get them to still sound natural, but actually perform their function of limiting overdrive.
Yeah.
So that feature often ends up taking a fair amount of time.
So from our chat, we have a question that's come in. Someone's asking, I have an Aviator Gold. What amps are channel 1 and channel 2 based on?
I like to think that they're not exact replicas of any particular amp. There are general principles that have been developed by, the great designers of the past, Leo Fender, some of the other engineers of, maybe more kept in the back room, but responsible for, the Marshall sound, Vox's sound, and whatnot.
Right.
All of them basically manipulate the relationship between bass, mid-range, and treble.
Right.
So when you have a fairly flat sound, because guitar pickups are pretty mid-rangey, you basically get a lot of output in the mid-range, which tends to be the region where chords break up the easiest.
Right.
So if you want breakup, you want a sound that's kind of fat and mid-rangey. It's why old vintage style tweed amps are still beloved for people who just want to wail. But Leo Fender in particular didn't really like the idea of breakup. He considered that to be a technical deficiency. So he discovered that if you take out some of the mid-range but leave in the bass and treble, you get this full-bodied chiming tone that cuts through, and even when you turn up to the point of mild breakup, it doesn't really, the chord retains its character and doesn't sound that distorted. And so the tone contour, or so-called mid-scoop, there's all these little variables in terms of where that falls. One of the things we did with some of our earlier products was that we kind of revived the idea of actually offering a flat response, contrary to the sort of sound of a classic guitar amp with the knobs on 5. It's not a flat response. It has a mid-scoop. But we start with a flat response, but we have active EQ controls that let you, dial in the tone contour you want.
So you can get that if you want, but you had to actually do it.
Right. And also because I had, a lot of friends say, I never really knew what my guitar sounded like until I plugged in through one of your amps, because I always was just hearing the kind of the built-in sound of the amplifier.
Right.
So, I would say that the early Aviator Gold that the question's referring to probably doesn't really have a very distinctive tone contour other than what you dial in with the EQ controls. So in that respect, it's probably closest to something like an old school tweed amp, but with some real headroom and a modern, more somewhat brighter speaker. As time went on, we discovered, people are used to the way that, the tone standards of the industry sound, so we began to offer those voices as a starting point.
Right.
But we still keep the active EQ, so you can really manipulate the tone much more so than amps with passive tone stacks.
Very cool. We're going to start rolling into the taking a look at the DirectAmp now. But if you have questions, throw your questions in the chat, which is over there, I think, somewhere. Feel free to ask questions, and we'll try to get back to them by the end of the show.
So,
but DirectAmp.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with DirectAmp? What's the story?
Well, of course, I'm, as I said earlier, I like to actually, move some air with a loudspeaker and fill the room with nice sound. But in this day and age, we need a device that can get as close to that as possible while going straight into a computer. So you heard us do earlier on. We'll just do a one-line repeat here.
Yep.
I am plugged in through a Cub amp behind me. Chris is plugged in through the DirectAmp. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3. Okay, now we're going to switch. Chris, pull yours out. Yep. Put yourself in the cub. I'm going to plug into the DirectAmp. And we're going to repeat that. And you'll hear a pretty similar tone quality. The DirectAmp, because it is going in direct, tends to be just a little bit brighter and cleaner. But a 1 and a 2 and a 3. Of course, it's pretty easy to get a clean sound out of this, but the nice thing about the DirectAmp is it's got the same ability to dial in some overdrive and turn the master down to maintain a certain balance point. And that's on half gain. We can run the gain all the way up. Same nice bacon sizzly overdrive. Now we have that was with the cab sim switched in. Here's what it would sound like flat. Too much fizz, too much sizzle, so we switch in our cab sim circuit, and now you get because we're confining the frequency response to that of a typical guitar speaker. And we got several different positions here. So that was kind of a classic lead 80 position, somewhat more rounded upper register. We had a vintage 30, a little brighter. And we got a kind of a Jensen-y and then we've got that same nice limiter, which lets us take some of the distortion out. And we've got a push button for the limiter on. And then it's got an overdrive channel, so we can, let's see here, put this back on kind of an average gain level. And switchable reverb, of course.
We're confined in a tight space.
So anyway, I think you've heard that we haven't even gone through some of the voicings and whatnot, but it succeeds in sounding pretty much like a real amp without actually going through a speaker.
I mean, it's the obvious solution for the the things we haven't played with yet, the pedals. But for somebody who has a pedal board, basically, it's the obvious option to give yourself an amplifier-like sound. That's why the joke's kind of on us, I guess. The first time we actually put the word amp in a product, and there's no amp in the product. But it's the idea to be able to just go direct is something that I think people are realizing more and more. There's an importance to do that. And a step further while you're at it, since you have the Bluetooth enabled, we actually have a little bit of on your left there on the iPad. You can kick that on, and this is kind of one of the cool features that lets us.
Okay. So this Commander Cody from 1972. Is there a way to boost the volume on the iPad?
Yep, top left. There's a couple of buttons on the top left as you're looking at. Keep reaching up. Up there, yeah. There should be two buttons. The top one is your friend on that. Well, that was the down button. There we go.
Well, oh, mama, mama, how come you passed me by last night? Oh, mama, mama, how come you passed me by last night? I left my back door open, front door locked up tight. Well, you know I love you, baby, and there's a reason why. It ain't the way you treat me, it's the way you satisfy. Oh, mama,
I think you hit a
mama,
tuning key.
you're just like 18 karat gold.
Just tap the center of it.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Oop.
Yep, we tapped the tuning key. But the general idea is that along with the Bluetooth, it lets you basically plug in to sound sources.
Right. So and I have to admit, I was kind of dragged kicking and screaming into this. I'm like, come on, how hard can it be just to plug your iPhone in with a earphone cable? And Chris, oh well, you should really try it. Well, I have to admit, it's actually kind of cool. It's I can farm up something on the internet with my iPhone. Just pair up with this, and away we go. Let's see if we can.
Cream in my coffee, you're the sugar in my bowl.
I ain't no Bobby Blue Black, but it's fun to be able to jam along with tracks and for both just practice and fun.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's well, and when you have to rehearse and you actually want to rehearse with your actual pedal board, what are you going to do? Crank the amp up and blow everyone's ears out late at night, or just get some headphones out, plug it in, and you're on your way. Another question's come in using the Aviator Mach 3 for a modeler. So switching gears for a second, Mach 3 for a modeler. Is it best to use the effects return jack or the channel inputs? Are both safe for the amplifier?
Actually, using the channel inputs is technically safer in the sense that all our amps are dialed in to have a maximum power with master or speaker volume all the way up that's compatible with the speaker we supply. internally, the amps actually have more unused power because we need that for breathing room. That gives the amps the ability to have that kind of extra zing that tube amps have. So I always recommend using the regular input just because the amp's internal clipping circuit will keep your power level at or below what you have set on your speaker volume. It is possible to dial in a flat sound with the amp inputs, but if you're, a little bit careful, you can go in through the effects return and get a unequalized flat response, but you're still going to hear the sound of the amp and speaker, the power amp and speaker working together, which is, like all guitar amps, not a truly flat sound. It's tone reproduction is an entirely different art form than tone production. Guitar amps produce tone. Hi-fi sets and speakers reproduce tone.
Right.
So we're...
I think the output, though, you can switch to flat, but...
you can... Well, we have a direct out that has our analog cab sim or FRFR for people with speaker models in their console. But as heard through the speaker, it's always going to have the same kind of naturally vibrant tone, but it's not, again, it's there to sound good with an electric guitar.
Right.
And it'll sound fine with a modeler. It just won't be technically accurate. Do you want to be technically accurate? That's actually another whole question. Yeah. There's a lot of subtleties involved in how to get a good sound with, these basically antique coils of wire around magnets.
Yeah.
So, that's where we come in as amp designers.
And I think we've got another one, have a couple of questions. Does the power amp output in the Superblock series have any coloration to match the preamp section?
Okay, and yet another technically complicated question. So if you were to play or test one of our power amp sections into a dummy load, you would see a respectably flat response. We don't try to go from sub-audio to, ultraviolet light. We roll the very low and very high frequencies beyond the range of audibility. We roll them off to prevent the speaker from flapping and, being driven by, frequencies you can't hear or wouldn't want to hear even if you could. That said, getting the speaker to sound clear and flat doesn't necessarily require the same qualities in an amplifier as your traditional PA or laboratory amplifier, which is designed to have a very high damping factor and a very flat frequency response well beyond the range of human hearing. You want that for testing speakers because it's a known quantity. But for sounding good, you actually want an amp that has a very low damping factor, and that's going to change the sound of the speaker and let it kind of come to life. But you're going to hear the speaker more, not necessarily a technically flat sound. I think it sounds closer to flat with a typical guitar speaker because it lets the bass and treble come through a little more. But if you were to, put a measurement on it, you would probably say, well, this isn't very hi-fi, but we don't want hi-fi. We want it to sound good. For guitar amps, there's kind of a de facto standard of lo-fi, if you will, that gives the warmth and just a kind of that nice musical property that we're all looking for.
And Pedro's second question, what was the design choice to not include the power amp in the DirectAmp?
Because it's designed to go direct. At some point we might go ahead and put some power in it, but the whole idea is we've got a ton of different products. If you want to move air and drive a speaker, this was designed to be, a cost-effective interface that does some very nice things. We haven't even talked about how it can unfold your guitar into stereo for the use of particularly people playing into computers and trying to get a nice sound, either for recording or just to perform on the internet.
Or just practicing with headphones. I mean, you no doubt you heard the Bluetooth coming through in stereo, but all your stereo effects coming through in stereo, that's just cool.
And I think we can demonstrate that. Play a little. Okay, just smack it and listen to the reverb. Okay, now I'm going to switch it to mono. So now the reverb is right in the middle of my headphones. Now I'm going to switch it back to stereo. Now I'm hearing kind of an ambient cloud of reverb.
Yeah.
So the reverb chip that we're using in this takes mono input and develops two reverb signals that come out in stereo.
Right.
And gives you the feeling of an actual space instead of just kind of a tail.
Right.
And we've got other effects here. We'll turn the reverb off for a minute. So now we have a New Neighbor Inspire developing sort of a stereo. And again, if I put it back to mono, now you hear the effect, but let it.
It's just more spacious.
Right.
For those of you listening on a stereo system.
And there's reverb plus the Inspire. So here's a little bit of a story for you. So Chris and I were driving my 1938 Bentley on a 1,000-mile road trip called the California Melee, and this was in 2018. There's a outfit that puts on this kind of tribute to the Mille Miglia of the famous road race in Italy they used to have up until the 50s, when unfortunately they had a tragic accident that killed people in the onlookers because they just did it on public roads. So this is not a race; it's just a cruise, really.
Yeah.
But they put us up in fine hotels and nice restaurants and pick scenic roads to go on every day. So we're driving along and we're enjoying the trip, and we're having dinner with some of the other people, and one of the people at our table's going, finds out we're in the guitar amp business, and he goes, what I really want is I want to have the facilities of a pedal board, but I don't want to actually have to set up a pedal board. It's complicated, and I just want something I can plug into and have some different sounds built into it, and just be able to rock out in my backyard with my dad band. And so
that's a thing nowadays.
And so we said, well, talking to ourselves, well, we need to make a product called the Dadster, that would basically be kind of a pedal board in a box, if you will, that would give enough power to drive a speaker and have all the basic facilities. Well, we're finally there now with the DirectAmp and the Elevate. The only part that it doesn't have is the power part. But there are so many small powered speakers or our own combos that you can pair with this that it's something that's probably we'll do on our long list, but it's not exactly a gap, if you will.
Right.
Whereas the idea of having a really good, musically sensible, easy to get a good basic sound on kind of multi-effects quasi pedal board is still kind of a bit of an unmet need.
Yeah, well, for a lot of pedal board players that plug directly into an amplifier, finding themselves increasingly playing on stages that just aren't friendly to amplifiers. It's kind of a reality of our modern day, where, congrats on QSC, people have PA systems everywhere. I was in the bathroom the other day. There was a PA system in there. But so the question doesn't become how to lug something, yet another amplifier there that you have to turn down ridiculously low. One of the great challenges of tube amplifiers is to make them sound good, you have to crank them. That's why your guitar teacher will tell you, hey, when you're practicing, practice at the volume you're going to play at, because the amp sounds different. And that's one of the things baked into our product. You can actually play it and get the same tone at a lower volume, but sans having a Quilter with you, there's always a PA system. I mean, if you get it for no other reason than just to have something in the back of your gig bag as a backup, it's the best insurance policy you could have. If you use it, you'll wind up switching to it. That's generally how it goes. But okay. So I'm plugged while he was talking about that, I plugged into this to kind of try out pedals in front of it with the guitar for a moment. So I'm in the DirectAmp now. So let's kind of roll through with the guitar and kind of experiment with some of the features on it and try some tones out.
Okay, so right now we're on Chris is playing a humbucker. A guitar with good, powerful humbuckers, so we don't need a whole lot of gain around 2 really to get on kind of the edge of breakup here. And then we'll just start with a totally dry sound. And then we got those are the 3 voices. And then we got different cab options. And then we can switch on the distortion channel. Keep going, please. Now the distortion channel can be used as just a volume boost. Or you can dial down the output and dial up the distortion gain.
So clean configuration. So what are you switching there?
This is the clean channel voicing.
Got it.
Because the distortion channel acts, and we've just like a virtual distortion pedal, which we'll try in a minute, so that it comes in first,
Right.
Here's your input, and then goes. The clean gain is set on 5 when you're in distortion mode, but the EQ and voicing is still effective.
Got it.
So that does have when you're generating distortion harmonics, it's really easy to hear the effect of the voicings because you got all this extra fizz and sizzle that you can hear the EQ on.
Right. So you can hear, there's a lot of tone resources in here, but it's all
This is an analog product. It's all set up with conventional volume controls. You've got some switches for useful presets, but a lot of it's just going to be you're going to sit here and dial in until you get a sound you like and then go to town with that.
But does it take pedals well?
They all ask that. And why, yes, it does. So give us another. So there's the, what is this?
JHS?
Right.
I forget which one it is, actually.
But once again, it's a.
Josh, forgive me.
This comes in front of the amp, so the same.
And this thing, actually, I think it has multiple, if I remember correctly, multiple types of pedals. So everything from Tube Screamer, we're on a Tube Screamer 7, TS7, JHS. And there you have it. So it you know, just kind of, you can get a lot of tone out of your pedal board. I was playing around the other day and I wound up getting like a 5150 Van Halen sound out of the thing, which surprised me. I thought that would be tough to do, but between the Inspire that I had plugged in, here, let me kick it on, see if I can do it again. Something to that effect. I think the mix is different, but whatever, you get the idea.
And the nice thing about, you can, because you have a built-in distortion channel, you can actually preset two kinds of distortion. So give us this one. Does it, gent? I need to tune this thing. So in a nutshell, it's, it's the perfect package for someone that has to go direct. It's the best insurance. Cool. Well, I think we're just about to wrap up. Shark Air asked. Shark Air. You have the coolest name on YouTube. Shark Air. Didn't you have an amp that was designed for harmonica at one time? Not specifically, because, if we designed, and no offense to harp players, if we designed the perfect harmonica amp, we'd probably sell 10 a year.
That's why harmonica players typically use guitar amplifiers,
right?
Because the reality, I think, gets down to
Well, the classic, Chicago overdrive harmonica sound was developed playing through some, little champ or whatever. And so a couple of our amps have become somewhat popular with harp players because they have that same kind of fat, blatty tone.
Yep.
But I can't say that we've ever designed something exclusively for harmonica players.
I have to say, there's a good question for Sharkhair. Sharkhair, what would the perfect harmonica amplifier be? That's a good question, actually, and it's something that we've actually kind of pondered, because I think at one time there was a thing called a Kinder silencer or something. I can't remember, Kinder something that they used to basically keep it from feeding back. It was like an anti-feedback mechanism, but we tried to get a hold of one, but apparently the person making them didn't even respond to emails at that point. So we never really kind of looked back, to be honest. But you tell us in the comments, what would the right amp for harmonica be? Or what features would that have to have that were different than what we have today? Jim Goose also, he says, could you please demo clean and edge of breakup sounds? Some of us play jazz or soul music and don't use overdrive on everything we play. The JHS pedal is called Bonsai. By the way, thank you. So clean.
So this is on the middle setting, which is pretty flat, and we've got just enough gain to get a little bit of cheese on his tacks. And play a good full.
So dial it in even cleaner than that. I'm actually hearing a lot of it through the microphone itself. Can you bring the master up low? helps. So that's your real clean, but with just the edge of breakup. You know, the nice thing, if you tend to be like one of the players that plays with backing tracks, that's the other kind of cool thing about the wireless input that we call Jamlink now, which is Bluetooth basically. The cool thing about that is it's a lossless codec. So if you're playing something off of your phone, you can connect via Bluetooth. And you may have noticed from our little session earlier, it sounds crystal clear. It's like having a high fidelity input to your audio. So with all that, I think we're running out of questions, and we're gonna I'll plug back in the amplifier. You plug back in there, Pat. And we'll lead out with old Sleepwalk.
All right, let's see, wait a minute. For Sleepwalk, we gotta dial in more reverb. And put this on the middle voice, a little more gain and some limiter. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Catch us next week for the next Q Show.
Thank you for your kind attention.
I found peace, loving on those who